This episode is a deeper dive into the Master Lock 410 Lockout-Tagout lock. We'll talk about what's inside of it, 4 major challenges of picking it, and how to overcome those challenges. Hey folks, welcome to Pugs Picks Locks. If you're new here, feel free to click that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you'll always be notified when I release new content like this. And if you like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, click that like button, and leave a comment or question down below. Did I get something wrong? Is there something I could do better, do differently? Please let me know. I want to learn from all of you so that I can continue to grow my knowledge and skill set and provide you with better and better content. Also, leave a comment if there's a specific topic that you'd like covered in a future video. Okay, let's start with the shout out of the week. This week's shout out goes to the Sadistic Picker. As of filming this episode, his subscriber count is 624. That is far below what he deserves. Not only is he a talented picker, but I love his sense of humor, and his videos are sprinkled with extra animations and clips and contain interruptions from his kids and his dog that amuse the hell out of me. Plus, he's a fellow left-handed picker, so I gotta promote the left-hand posse. So, let's all follow the link in the description and give him a sub. Hopefully we can get him over that 700 mark. Alright, let's dive into this week's video. The Master Lock 410 LOTO is one of those milestone locks for new pickers. For many, it's their first introduction to spool and serrated pins, and for many beginners, these locks can be humbling. So conquering them is a huge step forward for them. So what makes these challenging locks? There's 4 things that make 410s a bit more of a challenge than most beginners are used to. And so we'll talk about those 4 challenges and we'll talk about how to overcome them. So the first challenge is security pins. On the screen is a picture of the pin stacks from a gutted 410. And you can see that there are spool pins in all of the pin stacks except for pin stack number 5. So if you're not used to dealing with security pins, in this case spool and serrated pins, this will be a new challenge, and it will provide a challenge even if you are used to or have already learned how to address security pins. Combined with the other challenges in this lock, the security pins really kind of show up as an obstacle. The next challenge that these locks tend to provide is tough bidding. You can see on this key there are very high and low cuts on the key. And so you have a high lift hidden behind a low lift. You have, in every single one of these, there's a high lift hidden behind a low lift in front of it. Pin 2 is hiding behind pin 1, and that's a higher lift. Pin 4 is hiding behind pin 3 and is a high lift. And, pin 6 is hiding behind pin 5, and that's a very high lift. So that high-low type of bidding makes it a challenge to set the high lifts without oversetting the low lifts. In the case of this key, we can see that that the high lifts are this hump in the middle, which means you have to reach past the low lifts to get those high lifts in. The low lifts on pins 1 and 2 in order to get 3 and 4 set all the way up high. So that high-low bidding, this is definitely the more wicked bidding of the two. That high-low bidding can provide a challenge and can be an obstacle for a lot of beginners who are not used to dealing with that and are not used to reaching up behind a low lift to get a high lift set. The next challenge is a bit related, and it's kind of a side effect of of that high-low bidding, and that is zero lift pins. On this key, you can see that pin 1 looks like it may be a zero lift. Pin 3 rather, could potentially be a zero lift also. The thing about zero lift pins, and on this key you can see that 6 is a zero lift and that 1 is likely a zero lift. The thing about zero lift pins is that if you're not used to feeling for them, you're not used to recognizing that this pin is a zero lift pin, you might crank on it a bit thinking that it's binding and therefore overset it. Zero lift pins will have little to no travel whatsoever before there's resistance, and that can feel like a binding pin, and so your tendency might be to continue cranking on it until it moves, in which case it is automatically overset. All right, the next challenge is that these are dead core locks, meaning that there is no spring. I'm just gonna open this real quick. I should have maybe disconnected the keys. Okay. So they're dead cores, which means that there is no spring resistance whatsoever in the core. The core is not sprung at all. The shackle isn't sprung. It just moves freely. And the locking mechanism itself has no springs, so that means that the plug just spins with zero spring resistance. You can see that it is not springing back to the closed position when I move the plug. I can move the plug and leave it anywhere and it just stays there. It is a dead core. And that drastically changes the feel of the lock. If you're not used to dealing with a dead core, if you're not used to that feeling and the feedback that you do or don't get from it, it can present quite a challenge. These are the 4 primary obstacles in picking these locks. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick this one open, and you can see that it has, like I said, it has some wicked bidding on it, the highs and lows, right? Especially 6 is a high reach all the way up in the back. But I'll show you a trick. Well, it's not a trick. I'll show you a quirk of max lifts. That is a maximum lift all the way up, right? So that is the highest cut you can have with these locks. Okay, so let's start with the dead core. Because these locks are going to give different feedback than you're perhaps accustomed to, actually, let's start with this lock. Because they have dead cores, they're going to give different feedback, and the amount of tension you use, you're not fighting against a spring. So if you're used to cranking the tension a bit, you're going to have to learn to ease up on the tension, especially with the spool pins that these locks contain. With the spool pins, you're going to have to really you're completely in control of every movement of the core of the plug, so that the counter rotation, so set 5, so the counter rotation, you see how when I press on pin 4, trying to get a better example of some, I opened it. Okay. So when you're the amount of tension and the amount of tension you press with the pick is going to push is going to counter rotate, is going to push the plug back, is going to push the turning tool back against your tensioning finger. So that is going to be a function of how hard you're applying the, how hard you're pressing the pin with the pick is going to be how much, I'm trying to show this, how much how much pressure gets returned against you. There's no spring pressure that you're just sort of easing up and riding the spring tension. You're balancing the amount of pressure you're applying with the pick against the amount of pressure that you're letting up or pressing against with your tensioning finger. So now I'm on a spool pin, and it's really hard to get a good angle here to show the counter rotation. So do you see that? I press and I push back against my thumb. Press, push back against my thumb, and then again. Trying very hard to not cover the camera with my hands, the camera view with my hands as I do this. Okay, and we have it open again. All right, so dealing with the dead core, let's see if the other one gives us a little bit more action now that I think about it. I know that I normally narrate what's going on inside the lock, and I'm not narrating on purpose right now because we're going to get to that in just a second. Okay. Still trying to get one of the spool pins to be really talkative, and that's the thing. Another thing is that some of the counter rotation is fairly subtle. The core isn't moving as much as you might have experienced with other locks. Okay, let me get there. Okay, you see that movement? That movement is all as I press with the pick on pin 6, it's turning. That is what is causing the pressure back on my thumb. There is no spring to deal with. Okay, so in order to deal with a dead core, you have to develop a lighter tensioning touch, and you have to pay attention to balancing the amount of pressure you're applying to the pins and the amount of pressure that you're applying to the tension tool. You have to learn how to balance, almost float those two things, because one is going to influence the other. If you're being really ham-handed and cranking really super heavy tension, you might not get any movement because you don't have the spring assisting you. Okay, so with the zero lift pins, dealing with zero lift pins, you have to get used to. So if let's see, this one has a zero lift in position 1 and position 6. So if I go ahead and I apply a tension, and then I go to pin 1. If pin 1, there was no movement on it whatsoever before the resistance, and then I just moved it and it's overset. So especially because with the dead core, you're going a little bit lighter on the tension than maybe you're used to. It's very easy to overset a pin, especially one of the zero lift pins, because when you touch it, normally when you touch a pin that's already been set, there will be a teeny bit of it's called the jiggle test, right? You'll be able to move the key pin, and the key pin will just be floppy and jiggly. But with a zero lift pin, it gives you resistance right from the start, so it feels like a bound pin. So you have to get used to feeling that and realizing that there is absolutely nowhere for that pin to move, that it's already set. It is a zero lift. It doesn't take any lift at all. And when you overset it, the only thing to do is release the tension and let it drop back into the keyway. Okay. So one of the things you can do is you can go through pin 1 is a zero lift, right? So now I'm going to go to skip right over pin 1 and go to pin 2. Pin 2 gave me a click, a resistance, and a click. It was a different feeling from the zero lift. So I know that pin 2 is not a zero lift. So now I reset the core, and I can go 1, 2, and then move to pin 3. Pin 3 gave a click, so it's not a zero lift. Then I go to pin 4. I keep doing that process all the way through the lock until I've identified which ones of the pins are zero lift pins. The zero lift pins are the ones that are gonna give you resistance right away, not give you a click. It's gonna feel mushy as you're pressing on it, or I don't know if mushy is the right term, but it won't give you that satisfying click. So figure out the difference between what a zero lift pin feels like and what one of the other pins that actually does have a bit of a lift to it, what that feels like. Identify which pins are the zero lift, and then get good at skipping over those pins. So this is where you really need to practice your pick depth, mastering your pick depth, which I mentioned in my 5 tips for beginner lock pickers, is mastering your tools, mastering your pick depth. If you need to mark your pick so that you make a mark so you can visually see with a Sharpie or a pencil or something, so you can visually see, right now I'm on pin 1. And that was, that's a zero lift. Now I'm on pin 2, pin 3, pin 4. Get used to being able to identify how deep your pick is, know for certain what pin you're on. This is where that tip becomes important. Okay, so dealing with the zero lift pins, and then dealing with tough bitting, dealing with those high lows, with those high and lows, you really just, part of it comes down to the tool. I am using a Pagoda hook, which is my favorite pick. It's the first pick that I reach for. But one of the things that I've done in the past is I put my thumb right there, so that's kind of represents where the bottom of the keyway is, and I've made sure, if I can hold on to okay, so put my thumb at the shoulder, and then I can see, can I reach each one of the pins? Can I make that lift without oversetting the pin in front of it? And I can do that with this tool. If I couldn't with this tool, I would go and I would grab one of my tools that has a higher, it has a steeper hook on it. The other thing is that you are probably going, if you're not using it already, you're going to have to start using top of the keyway tension to give you enough room inside the keyway to work and to reach up behind the low lifts, to make a high lift behind a low lift in front of it. So you're going to have to start getting used to top of the keyway tension here. There are some LOTOs, 410s, that I've been able to go bottom of the keyway tension on. But for the most part with these, I just start top of the keyway because I know, especially if it has some wicked bitting on the key, I start with top of the keyway tension. All right, the security pins. This is actually where the security pins are actually kind of your friend a little bit. Like for instance, with this lock, if I go straight to pin 5, I set pin 5 right away. Pin 5 is the serrated pin. Pin 5 is the pin that is preventing the core, the plug, from being incredibly floppy. Because as soon as you set that pin, now I'm in a bit of a false set. I'm in a bit of a false set where the spool pins now come into play. So there's 5. Here's 4, spool pin. Here's 3, spool pin. Deeper false set, and here's pin 2. Pins 1 and 6 are 0 lift pins, and so I skipped those. I went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I mean 5, 4, 3, 2. Start with the serrated pin. On this lock, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start with pin 5. Okay, and then we would work our way. Pin 6 is going to be that high lift in the back. Oops, I dropped pin 5 as I did that. So there's 5. So let's go 3. So once you've set pin 5, oh, that was an overset on 1. Got that back. 2, 3, 4, 5. A second click out of 5. Then there's 6 in the back, and almost had it. This is that high lift in the back. Almost had it. I'm working at angles that I don't normally work at. Because normally I'd be like this, but now you can't see what's going on. And I dropped all of them, so. 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6. No, I didn't drop all of them. They were still going pretty good. Just do a quick feel. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope. 4, 5, and 6. There we go. Okay. So the idea is to get to a false set as quickly as possible. And the way you get to a quick set as quickly as possible is by dealing with pin 5 first. So I'm going to deal with pin 5. Just going to give the pins a quick scrub to make sure they all fell back in the keyway properly. So I'm going to go to the back of the lock. I'm going to find pin 6, and then I'm going to go to pin 5. And now I have a little bit of false set. I felt the tension wrench move. And then I can, let's see if I can get something out of 6 in the process. Okay, I hit 6 and I got an even deeper false set. So 5 and 6 appear to be set. 5, 6, 5, 4. Okay, so counter rotation on 2. Oops. I wasn't getting anything on, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I missed something somewhere. Oh, 6 is giving me counter rotation again. So did I drop 6 by mistake? Okay, 2 just set and 3. Okay. So go after pin 5. Try to get to the false set as quickly as possible. Once you've set pin 5, and when you're setting one of the spool pins and you're dealing with that counter rotation, you might 5 might drop back into the keyway, and that's fine. If you lose your false set, just go back to 5 and touch it again, and you should get your false set back. So dealing with the security pins, 5 is a serrated pin, so you might get multiple clicks out of it depending on how high a lift pin 5 is. You might just get 1 click if it's a low lift, but you might get multiple clicks out of it if it's a high lift. But once you've set pin 5, the other pins are all spool pins, and they'll all talk to you with counter rotation if they need to be set. Remember, there are 0 lift pins that don't need to be set. So anyways, those are the 4 major challenges of picking a Master Lock 410 and how to overcome those challenges. So hopefully these tips have helped you out.
Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, remember to drop a like and leave a comment or a question below. If you're new here, subscribe and ring the notification bell for more content like this. Until the next video, happy picking y'all.